Hello, you guys. Welcome to Cantina Talk. I'm Kathy Kenobi, and here is my co-host Maui Calrissian.
Oh,
Oh, Maui
Maui
Wan
Wan
Kenobi.
Kenobi
Whoa, whoa,
today.
whoa! You changed it on me.
I
Shoot.
did.
I'm just gonna get out in front of this. Sorry to everybody who has to hear my voice right now. My lovely baby sister got married this past weekend to my lovely new brother-in-law, and my voice is shot. So sorry about this. You're getting the husky version of Catherine today, but we will get through it. We will soldier. We will soldier on.
Yes.
We are here today to begin our slew of Star Wars film deep dives, partially to hold us over between now and more Star Wars content probably later this month, but also because we just ranked them and we want to go through and give more detailed thoughts about what we think of each installment in the Star Wars film canon, at least. And so because we're doing this for the first time, we are a little loosey goosey on the format at this time. We're going to kind of experiment on this. So we are starting with the lowest rung on our collective totem pole, and we are going to talk about the Rise of Skywalker because we both
Yes.
rated that the lowest of the 12 films that we went through.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of kicked around how we were going to do this because for those of you who've been watching us for more than a few weeks, we would go through all the Bad Batch story beats, scene for scene. And even though those are only 25, 30 minutes long, it would take us the full hour to go through every story beat. So if we did the same thing for a full length feature film, we'd be here for about 4 hours. And we both have lives.
Yes.
Contrary to popular opinion. So we are going to go through this in a different way. We're going to try going through this character by character, or at least, in some cases, duo by duo, because in some cases it doesn't make sense to talk about one character without talking about another character. Like in this instance, Rey and Kylo / Ben. You can't really talk about one without talking about the other. So that's what we're going to do to talk about our least favorite, The Rise of Skywalker. Let's do this thing. You wrote down all of our selections. Yes. I'm guessing Rey Kylo is me first.
Yeah, we can start with I mean, it's that I would say that's the main storyline. Rey Kylo. I'd also just like to maybe first just hit some general thoughts about the movie overall. So I just rewatched it.
Okay.
And there's so many things that it does well.
Mm-hmm.
There's some really thrilling action sequences. There's some nice fan servicey moments and whatnot. So I will say there are definitely things to enjoy. It keeps you engaged throughout. I can understand why people like it, because I know plenty of people who do like Rise of Skywalker. Babu Frick in particular is a highlight for me. I love Babu Frick. Put cute things in there and I'll just be happy.
I was gonna say, if we got to the end of this episode without completely running out of time and we were looking at more characters, I'd be like, Babu Frick.
Yeah, I loved him. Chewie getting a medal finally was a nice moment.
Disagree, but all right.
Because he should have gotten one in the first place, so it's not
totally.
But got one. But that also I think highlights kind of a problem throughout, which is that they're just doing these things to kind of check off things for the fans, right? And as opposed to just telling and engaging story. And that many decades after it happened, there's not really a reason for it other than winking at the fans,
right?
Which is if they were after the battle was won and everything, and then they did another medal sequence, but Chewie gets one this time, then maybe that would have been more perhaps appropriate. But all of these like great moments in it are surrounded by really shoddy storytelling, which kind of just ruins the experience for me. So those are just kind of my general thoughts. So there's some really great like watershed moments, but the connective tissue of the story itself is so weak that it just kind of ruins it for me, which is why it's at the bottom of my list.
Yeah, if we're talking from a story standpoint, you mentioned that, it keeps you engaged. It almost kind of had to, because the pacing was so breakneck. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't get a moment to breathe in this entire movie. So like, yeah, like it's engaging because there's just go, go, go the entire time pretty much. And another thing I wanted to go on is just the lack of conviction, I guess is the word I'm going to use in this movie. Like, for example, there are count them, 4 different characters that die and then come back. Like, this movie is incapable of making a strong choice at any point in time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from the time the crawl comes up after in the title sequence saying that Palpatine is back, it's like that in itself is a lack of a strong choice, because you're just bringing back an old baddie instead of making a decision on who you want to be your new baddie now that Snoke is gone.
Yeah.
There's just this film bothers me so much. Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the bringing the Emperor back in the opening crawl was very upsetting for me. I remember seeing it, and it's like, wait, that's how they bring him back, by just telling you that he's back, and
right?
That's insane.
Right. Yeah. I remember the trailer dropping, and there's that sound effect where it all goes black and the Emperor laughs, just like in the darkness, and then the Rise of Skywalker title comes up. And I remember thinking to myself, like, they didn't. No way. Like that's a fake out. That it's gonna be him in like a vision or a Force ghost or a flashback or something. Like, I'm like, there's no way they brought him back to be like the main villain of this film. I just refused to believe it. I was like, that's stupid. Like, that's a fake out. No way. And then it ended up being the entire plot of this film. I was just like,
so after finally rewatching, because I think this is my first full rewatch since I saw it in the theaters when it first came out.
That's crazy.
My fix for that is just take that out of the opening crawl. Like, the opening of the movie is fine. Like, just take him out of the text of the opening crawl. And then the other thing I would do is actually not show him, and I would have him be maybe immaterial, like a Force ghost or something like that, and he's trying to gain corporeal form.
Yeah, kind of like a Sauron character.
Right. It's a tiny tweak that I think would make it more palatable for me. But like, just having him like, no, he's been back the entire time. He's always, he never, it seems like he never really died. That undercuts it. But if he is like a diminished Force ghost trying to come back, then that's a bit different. Because like, his motivation isn't even to come back, and we'll get to that, I guess, more when we get to like Palp's like.
Well, I mean, we're kind of on him already. We can just start with him if you want to.
Okay, let's just get through Palp's and
sure. I mean, I mentioned this in the previous installment. I agree with you that him having a purpose for being there instead of like a fully formed bad guy probably would have been better. I don't think it would have fixed the issue though, because what I was saying last time when we were going through our ranking list is that the bringing Palpatine back at all invalidates Anakin's story or Luke's story, depending on how you read it, about being the chosen one or bringing balance to the Force. I mean, that's if he's still there and if he's still a threat, then what was 1 through 6 for? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like, I don't know. I don't think they should have just like you said last time, made Kylo the bad guy and have him. You can still give him a redemption arc, I guess, if it's done right. I'm not saying it can't be done; it just has to be handled delicately. And have him, have him have the culmination of his character and taking over the dark side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, and here's the thing: if you have Palpatine, trying to gain corporeal form. If you have him, the voice that's been whispering in Kylo's ear the entire time, right? You still have Kylo as like the physical, like main big bad,
Right.
and you're trying to save him from the influence of the dark side personified in the spirit of Palpatine. I think that like lands a little bit better, right? Is like a ghost from the past trying to get back, as opposed to him just never really having gone away and having this entire fleet hidden in the
Yeah.
star system.
Right.
Well, you had everything you needed to destroy everybody forever, and you decide
Right.
just now, and for some reason, even though 2 times by relying on like a single thing without any redundancies that could get blown up and just screw over your entire fleet, you do it a third time. Because the whole thing with this is like, oh, but the only way that we can get out is, because of this one control tower. So if we destroy the control tower, then
Right.
then they can't get out. And it's just like,
Right. Like
why it's so hand of the writer. It just drives me insane.
No, yeah, and like if Palps could survive getting thrown down that reactor shaft and being blown up, and then being blown up a second time when the Death Star blows up, what's to say he's not going to come back a third time? Like,
Right.
This is insane. Yeah, it just ugh. There's nothing about this plot that I like. I'm gonna be honest here.
Same. So seeing that, right, like was really upsetting. So yeah, Palps disappointed me. Leia, similarly was disappointing, and I think that was kind of like out of their control. Obviously, right, because the passing of Carrie Fisher. But rewatching it is very obvious that they took whatever footage they had and wrote around existing lines of dialogue they had her saying, and it feels really weird, even more weird than the first time I watched it. I noticed it way more this time because I think the first time I watched it, I was misted by like my emotions of being sad that she was no longer with us, and that this would be the last on-screen performance that I would see of hers. Rewatching it more removed from that tragedy, it was really weird.
Yeah, and the issues I have with Leia's story arc, if you can really call it one, in this movie really correlate actually with my issues with Palpatine, because in both Palpatine's arc and in Leia's arc, you have them doing these things. In Palpatine's case, coming back from the dead or wherever the hell he was for the past 30 years. And in Leia's case, you have her reaching out to Kylo to turn him good somehow, or conjuring up the image of Han or whatever it is that she did. It's really not explained. Is that it's not explained. Like we don't know how these things are possible. Why at least in Leia's case she didn't do this before. Like Kylo's been obviously gone from her life for quite a while. If she had this power, why didn't she do it X number of years ago? Like to bring her son back. I just it's like you said, totally hand of the writer. And it's not that we need some sort of scientific explanation. It's not we're saying like, oh, it's unrealistic because it's the Force. Like, no, we're Star Wars fans. We can accept that the supernatural is a thing in this universe, and things, can happen through basically magic. We just need an explanation of, in this system that we've established over the past several decades, how this is possible within this system.
Right. There's an internal logic that they need to follow.
Right. And again, in Leia's case, why now? Why wasn't it possible before?
Right. Also, why did that kill her? Right. They just like, oh, I was going to take all of her strength to, it just seemed very, very shoehorned in. Like, we need a reason for her to pass.
Right.
To in that character's arc, and
are you
felt real strange.
This is going to be a weird question, but are you at all familiar with Sailor Moon?
Yeah.
Okay, so the entire third act of this movie felt like the final episode of a Sailor Moon season, because it was very much like, oh, I need to like gather your life force, X character, whether it's Ben or Rey or Leia, in order to defeat the big bad, which like happens routinely in Sailor Moon. I understand they're like, oh my god, I'm having flashbacks to like junior high.
So yeah, so that's Pops and Leia. Let's go back
Yeah.
up to the two main characters,
Let's do it.
Rey and Kylo.
Rey and Kylo.
I am not a big fan of Rey and Kylo having a romantic arc.
I hate it.
Okay.
I absolutely hate it. And I remember very vividly being in the theater at that point where Ben force heals her. That's another thing in itself. But anyway, and I'm sitting there, they're looking at each other. I'm sitting in the theater to be like, don't kiss, don't kiss, don't kiss. God, they're gonna make him kiss. Ah, fuck, they just made him kiss. Shit, I hate this. Why am I here? Because I don't see any romantic I could definitely argue some sexual chemistry there in Last Jedi specifically, for sure. But romantic chemistry, there's nothing there where they see, something in each other that they need in their life, or what's good about the other person that they spending time with. There's nothing there. This was so ham-fisted. It's not even funny.
And here's the other issue. Like, because seemingly they are attracted to each other because they are a dyad in the Force, which like kind of removes both of their agency to fall in love with somebody. Because it seemed like she was in the first movie falling for Finn.
Right.
Like it seemed like that, like there was a romance budding there.
Yeah.
That gets completely sidelined in Last Jedi, and even further removed in. Like I was like, okay, so is there going to be some sort of love triangle? And I think like there's a little bit of a red herring that like, oh, I have something to tell you, and then you realize, oh, no,
yes, oh my god,
she's more sensitive, which I wish he could have just fucking said it. But yeah, it removes any agency from the characters to make choices from themselves if it's just because they're in love with each other because they're a dyad in the Force. As soon as they see each other, they're like drawn to each other.
Right. Yeah, and up to this point, their relationship, if you could even call it that, is just him torturing her mentally and physically. Mm-hmm. In the past two films, like what basis of a romantic partnership is there?
Yeah.
Where are people getting this? I just the whole Reylo thing bothers me so much.
Same.
God, it's just gross. So gross.
With Kylo, I will say like, and you haven't seen Shang-Chi yet, have you?
I have not, no.
Okay. So this is not necessarily a spoiler or anything, but like it's something I've noticed, and it's like kind of something that happens in a lot of movies.
Okay.
That whenever they want to show that a bad person is good, they put them in a nice sweater.
Really?
Yeah. So like Kylo's, robes or shirtless or whatever, like in the movies, and then he becomes, he gets stabbed and becomes a good guy, and then he has like a nice like sweater from Old Navy on from that point. That's so funny because
when you said that you have a nice guy turn good, they put him in a nice sweater, I immediately thought of Chris Evans' character in Knives Out, who's the exact opposite. He's in a very nice sweater, and he is very much not a nice guy.
Yes. It's specifically like a trope in like big like fantasy sci-fi type films. So like I feel like that's a thing where like, oh, like we need to show that they're a good person, so we take them out of clothing that reads and is coded in our brains as evil, and we put them in something a little less severe.
That's interesting. I'm gonna have to look out for that now.
Yeah, it's really funny. So when you watch, with me saying that, when you watch Shang-Chi, see if you can catch the sweater turn in that. The
sweater turn, is that the name for that?
That's my new phrase. Yeah,
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about the complete 180 this movie does on Rey's parentage.
One of my biggest issues, like, first of all, and I think there are things they could have done that could have like made it more palatable for me, but like things they could have explicitly said that would have made it make more sense within like the larger scope of this series. um, because I think that her being a product of Palpatine is interesting.
Sure.
Is very interesting. Could be very interesting. I think they handled it
Sure.
very badly. Um, it's interesting to me if Anakin was the same kind of product.
There's a comic about that.
I've heard. I have not read it,
I've seen
but
the panel, but I've not read it either.
if like Anakin is similarly like from a Palpatine, then that's what truly I think ties Rey's story all together into like the final form of the Skywalker saga, because you find out that the Skywalkers are all Palpatines, and then the
Yeah.
naming convention becomes an allegory for the dark side versus the light, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
dark side is the Palpatine side of them, and the light side is the Skywalker side of them, and so when she says her last name is Rey Skywalker, then that actually makes more sense as well.
Yeah, because the way it is now does not make sense.
No.
I heard or read this somewhere, and I'm sorry I can't give credit to the person who thought of it, but somebody argued that it should not be Rey Skywalker because the only Skywalker she knew was Luke, and she spent like what 5 days with him, maybe on whatever planet that is. I can't think of it right now. No, the person that she had the most connection to in the original trilogy characters is Leia. And so she should have said Rey Organa because that is the person that she always connected with. She really trained her. Yes, Luke had her for a couple of days, but in the interim between 8 and 9, it was Leia that did all that stuff.
Yeah.
So having her say Rey Skywalker is just like such an obvious nod to the fans, which again, hand of the writer. It's them saying, "Oh, hey, this is the new Skywalker saga." Wink, wink, guys. When it story wise, it makes no narrative sense.
Right. And yeah, which is really frustrating because like it's an interesting turn,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I think once again, if you want to make 1 through 6 like have narrative weight within 7 through 9, connecting her to that family lineage is very interesting. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's an interesting subversion actually, if with the Palpatine thing, if there is a way that actually does connect it, not just thematically, but like really like literally connects it to the Skywalkers.
Yeah.
Right. Do you know about that comic that kind of like says that?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
what's the setup there?
So basically, the idea is that how Shmi conceiving and bearing Anakin was basically like a virgin birth sort of thing. There
Mhm.
was no father. The idea is that it was Palpatine manipulating her pregnancy. So, like in a sense, Palpatine is the father because he's the only way that she was able to conceive a child without
Is that
without more
canon?
traditional means.
Is that canon?
Yeah, I think so. Oh no, I don't know. I don't want to say either way because I'm
Because if
not
it was
into the comics.
pre Disney merger,
No, this is post Disney merger, I
if
believe.
it's post Disney merger, then that would be canon.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, what in terms of written media, what is and isn't canon is quite murky because the Ahsoka novel came out after the Disney merger, I believe, and a lot of the season 7 of Clone Wars kind of retconned a lot of that.
Right. And
So
then if I think it's like it overrides it, right? And then that
right,
becomes the new canon. And then like if
right,
a movie, I think the movies have like top
of course,
priority, and then
of
like
course,
I would assume like the television shows have the next set of priority, and then the books
books
and
and
comics have
comics.
like the lowest level of priority. So if something in one of those live action um storytellings contradicts something in the book or comic, then we go with the
Hmm.
whatever the live action or says.
Right, but since this was never really touched on, do
Right.
we do we think it's a thing?
Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
$64,000 question right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into it. So
Yeah,
maybe more thoughts
I
about
am
Ray.
most curious. More thoughts about Ray. Boy, it's funny because the whole lineage thing about Ray with her being a nobody was. I mean, you and I talked at length about the Last Jedi in our film rankings, and that was actually one of the things I liked about the Last Jedi is that the up to this point, up to the point of the Last Jedi, Star Wars had been a fandom all about one family, and so like everyone had to be related to the Skywalkers in some way, and this was the one time that the franchise like, nope, like this is a new era, anybody can be special and talented, it doesn't matter what weird family they came from.
Mm-hmm.
So them going back on that was really disappointing, and it's one of those. It's really funny because a lot of the problems with Rise of Skywalker came from the backlash of the Last Jedi. I don't think that was something that people were pissed about. I don't think that was something that needed to be retconned. Like
No.
I don't remember seeing. Maybe you saw something that I didn't. I don't remember seeing a lot of discourse about being like, oh, Rey should have been a Kenobi or Rey should have been a this or that. Like there's nobody was mad about this, and yet they felt the need to like backtrack on it anyway. It's very odd.
It's very odd.
Yeah.
All right, so screenrant.com
All right, go on.
says confirmed Anakin Skywalker father finally revealed. Blah 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 blah. Needless to say, they're gonna be major spoilers. Yeah. They talk a lot before they get to the thing.
Okay. Bearing
Qui-Gon
the
believed
lead.
the Force created Anakin. Yeah, you had to go way deep. Confirmed the Emperor was Anakin's father. Yes, Star Wars fan. Darth Vader number 25 confirms that Anakin Skywalker was the result of dark side / midichlorian manipulation inside of Shmi Skywalker's womb, performed personally by Emperor Palpatine. And for those who might wonder how Anakin would actually be able to learn such an earth-shattering truth without suspicion of it being further manipulation by his Sith master, the circumstances of the story help explain. Interesting. So yeah, I think that is canon. I think that's canon.
In which case, gross. Because if we're gonna say that Rey and Kylo are an item, that is incest.
Yeah, but I mean, Luke and Leia did it first. So.
They didn't do it. They had one kiss. Jeez.
I don't know. They hung around together for a long time after that kiss, and before like they found out the truth, and Han was
for shame
carbonite for a while. She's probably really upset.
Wow.
He's like,
wow.
Hey, it's okay.
Wow.
And then they found out later, and they're like, oh, that doesn't count, right?
This makes my Echo's robot arm comment seem tame by comparison. I just want to point that
out. I'm just saying, like, it's really weird. Like, and when Lucas says like there was always a plan, I'm like, really,
liar.
Did you? So you just wrote incest into your story? Interesting. Okay.
I mean,
yeah.
Seems like a really easy thing to avoid, George. If there was a plan.
I'm trying to think of like, because like we've talked very negatively so far. I'm trying to think of things that I liked. The fight sequence between Rey and Kylo on Endor on the shattered frame of the Death Star is a pretty cool fight scene. I dug that scene a lot.
I like the one in his chambers better, personally.
Which one?
The one where she's in his quarters where she finds the Vader mask and stuff, and he's somewhere looking for her. But they force Skype fight.
He's on the planet that she just snuck away from to get onto his ship.
Right.
Yeah, that was the other. I was literally gonna say I also like that scene a lot too.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. But it's funny because I don't understand how that Force Skype connection worked.
Yeah, but you know why? Because it's another thing they never explain.
Right. But were things physically teleporting somewhere else? Or was it just in their mind's eye? I was very confused.
So it's sort of established in Last Jedi that they can see each other, but not the other person's surroundings. So
but they were seeing stuff because when they hit stuff, it would spill out on the other side.
Right, because it became, I think in this case, it became part of the interaction.
Yeah, it's that. Yeah,
it's weird. It's undeniably weird. I can kind of see how that part makes sense. Because it becomes part of the fight.
I don't see how that makes sense. Please help me understand.
I just tried. It's hard because I don't fully understand it myself. But that's my understanding, is that because it became part of the interaction, because it became part of the fight, then you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it clunky? Yes.
Very much so.
One thing that I don't like, and I think breaks a lot of things, and I'm curious to see your take, because some people have tried to refute me, but I still believe it's true. Force healing. I think it's dumb, because there are many instances in the previous 8 films where a Jedi having force healing would have been really helpful and would have changed the trajectory of the narrative quite drastically. I'm talking Obi-Wan with Qui-Gon who's dying, Anakin with Shmi, maybe Obi-Wan with Padme when she's dying. Like in all these cases, a Jedi with knowledge of force healing would have changed a lot. And the fact that it's just here now with no introduction and no explanation breaks a lot of lore. And I know that it's been in video games. I'm not a gamer myself, but I understand that it's been a thing. But it makes a bit more sense to me in video games because, you kind of need to heal in order to stay alive in those situations. But this is not that. And the fact that, again, that it's not explained and not explained in a way that says, hey, this is why this is possible now and not previously, especially with no formal Jedi training, is bullcrap. And I don't like it.
I don't know. The force healing didn't really strike me as weird. It kind of makes sense to me that people would be able to use the force in that way.
Sure, but they never were able to before.
Well, at least not any of the Jedi that we encounter in, up to that point, right? But if we're saying that like these two are like crazy, stupid, powerful in the Force, like maybe like they're able to do advanced techniques that other Jedi would have had to take a long time to learn. I guess like I'm kind of okay with that,
Yeah.
Also, she had access to like ancient like Jedi tomes. She could learn like lost techniques. The people, there's like,
you got to call them by their proper name. The Sacred Jedi Texts.
I'm sorry, the Sacred Jedi Texts.
Sorry, continue.
So like, yeah, so that didn't really bug me too much, except for like you said, right? Like, it's just another thing that just happens, and there's no explanation. She does explain. She says, "Oh, I transferred a bit of my life force."
Right. It's not the idea that the force can be used for healing itself that bothers me. I can see a way that could make sense, especially with the force being tied to someone's life energy, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. It's just that nobody else before this has been able to do that. And in order for Rey to know about it, whether from the text or from Luke or whoever, that knowledge had been passed down to her in some way. And we haven't seen anybody use that previously. There was no precedent for it. She had to learn that from somewhere.
I don't know. She didn't really have much training from Luke either. Like, he gave her one lesson. She was able to do stuff that he was never able to do after a lesson. Like, she's so naturally gifted in the Force. She's just doing stuff off of pure instinct.
But that's my point, is that she never learned this from anywhere. So how does she know how to do it?
She never learned, like, I feel like she didn't learn, like, most anything she's been able to do that we watch her do. They
Mm,
finally show her training at the beginning of this movie with Leia for who knows how long
right.
in between the two movies, and like for all we know, it could be But I think the easy fix is just a line like, "Oh, I learned it from the Sacred Jedi text," or "Oh, this is
Totally.
a technique that Leia developed," or something,
But
right?
one
Like just give it some throwaway line that explains the new thing.
But one more issue that I have about that. Yes, I
Mm.
yeah, I agree. Like in so many things that we've touched on in this conversation alone, we don't need much explanation for these things
Mhm.
to work. We just need one line that's like, "Oh, okay, that's how she was able to do it and nobody was able to do it before," or whatever. My only other concern with this is if it's just that she's so force sensitive that she can just kind of do it, why wasn't Anakin able to do it? Because his midichlorians were like off the charts. He was like the most powerful Jedi ever. So like if she's able to do it, then surely Anakin would have been able to heal Shmi.
Yeah, and yeah, in theory, though, if as gravely injured as she was, then he probably would have killed himself. Also, he was so consumed by anger, his answer was just to kill things, not to try and heal her. And if like his instinct is not light side, if his instinct is dark side, perhaps that's not even a place where his mind goes. Instead of thinking like, how can I salvage this situation, he just goes straight to the dark side and says, I'm going to murder everybody. Right? He's
Yeah, but she wasn't
blinded
even
by his
dead yet.
rage, by his anger.
Yeah, but she
Well, she
wasn't
was
even dead
pretty
yet.
close
So
to death, right? Like she's
sure,
pretty
but
close to death at that point.
when Kylo or Ben heals Ray, she's already dead.
Yeah, yeah, she was
So
like straight up
she's further gone than Shmi was.
yeah, but she was pretty close. So like, I wonder, like, would he have? How much, like, if you're transferring that much life force, like even if she's not quite dead yet, like what are the limitations of that? That I don't know,
Right.
but it would be interesting to have an answer to, if like ever, and like maybe some of the expanded universe stuff, they like go into like the inner workings of force healing, would be interesting to learn more
Yeah,
about it.
it just feels like another one of those things that because this script was so patched together with duct tape and chewed up bubblegum, um, that they're relying on external sources like books and comics in order to patch up this script, and it really should not be that way.
Yeah.
Especially when your average Star Wars fan is never going to read those things. Like the things that these films should work in a self-contained narrative. Period.
Hmm.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that's just the way it is in this space. You were talking about one of the things that you liked about this film. I thought of something that I actually really liked. I
Yeah.
really appreciated Daisy Ridley's performance, particularly. I thought she sold it basically as well as one can sell it.
She is phenomenal.
She
Um,
is.
so the main three like leads,
Mhm.
like I have issues with Adam Driver a
I
little
do
bit,
too. Thank you.
with his performance, but Finn, Poe, and Ray are all doing amazing work. Like
Yeah,
those actors, Daisy Ridley, Oscar Isaacs, and John Boyega, are all doing incredible acting in
completely agree.
this film.
Com-
Especially Oscar Isaac, he really gets to shine in this one.
yeah, I mentioned Daisy particularly in this one because I feel like she had the most emotional arc and she had to do the most like hardcore emoting. But yes,
Mhm.
Oscar Isaac also does a very good job in this one,
Yeah, those are my top
especially
two.
yeah, especially having to deliver the line that somehow Palpatine returned and not laugh his way through it. Like he
Mhm.
really, the man did his best. The man did about everything one can do to sell that plot point. God bless him.
Yeah, and the only time where I would knock her acting, it's like the one mark in an otherwise flawless performance, is the force pulling acting that she has to do against Kylo for the
Mm-hmm.
transport, which
Mm-hmm.
is also maybe my least favorite um part of the film. Just like the Chewie death fake out.
God, I hated
It's
it.
so stupid, and
So
like
stupid.
they don't even hint in the scene that he actually got away in another transport, except for the fact that they show like the very first time you see him captured, they show that there are 2 transports there.
Right.
But besides that, they don't show another transport and going into orbit. Do they just sit there and hang out? Like where was the other transport through the rest of that scene?
Right. And keeping Chewie dead, as much as we all love him, would have made so much sense thematically, because then you got Rey thinking, "Oh shoot, I killed him. Like I with a dark side power, you know, with the Force lightning. Like I am starting down that path that I never want to go down."
Mm-hmm.
They just should have just kept it. It would have been. It would have. And it was funny because again, it's one of those moments that I remember being in the theater, being like, "Oh shoot, she killed Chewie," but like, good, not good that he's dead, but like good that they like did something that set her down that path. I really appreciated that at the time, and then I'm like, "Oh, damn it, they didn't do the thing."
Yes. Oh, 1 second, my headphones just went out.
Oh no.
I'm gonna put on my other set.
Cool.
Keep going though. Last thoughts on Rey and Kylo.
Last thoughts on Rey and Kylo. I'm going to defer to my list from the last time. I mean, we can actually. You know what? I'm going to use this.
Keep talking while I fix my.
Okay. I'm going to use this as a bit of a transition between us talking about Rey and Ben/Kylo, and also talking about Finn and Poe, which is our next duo that we were going to talk about. We touched on for a second about that whole like, "Oh, Rey, I've got something to tell you," and then he gets caught off, you know, at least twice, I believe. And there have been interviews.
I hate that.
God, there have been interviews where they asked J.J. Abrams like, what did he mean to say? And allegedly, it was supposed to be that, oh, he's force. He wants to tell Rey that he's force sensitive. But it's really dumb to introduce this plot point of him having to tell her something, and then they call back to it. It's not just like a quirk of the editing that is like kept it in. They have a conversation in the cave, like, "Oh, what did you mean to tell me? Oh, we'll talk about it later." They specifically draw attention to it, and then never resolve it. Like I full on thought that to me in the theater it was, oh, he wants to tell her that he loves her, which would have been fine, I guess. I mean, a little cliche, but not horrible. Mm-hmm. But if it was that he's force sensitive, then just like follow through on it. Don't just dangle this thing in front of your audience and then just like let it sit there for no reason. It would have taken a minute-long scene at most to have that reveal. It's completely baffling to me.
Yeah. It's super frustrating. So I at this point, sorry, my sound cut off for a little bit, so I want to make sure.
No, you're
good. We're into Finn and Poe now.
I was using that as a transition between Rey and Finn.
So real quick, last thing on Rey.
All right, go ahead.
I love her gold lightsaber at the end. It is gorgeous, and I love it. I love the color. I love the design. I love the like circular like switch on it. It's a very cool lightsaber, and happy that she gets her own distinct one. That's my last thoughts on her. But yes, that Finn storyline is so stupid. Now rewatching it, it's pretty obvious actually that in my mind that he's trying to tell her that he's force sensitive.
Really? What gave you that notion?
Yeah. Because like he keeps like feeling things like, oh, like his things here. How do you know? I have a feeling like they're lampshading that he's force sensitive, but I don't understand why not just say it?
Right, exactly.
Like even at the end, like why didn't we just say it?
Right. It's so silly. There's no reason for this. Yeah, there's no reason for this non-reveal. It's very strange. Yeah, I feel like Finn's arc in this film is odd.
Yeah, there's like not a lot to say about it, really. It's like he's running around, he's like has some really good banter with Poe. And then they're like, "Oh, here's a black person for you to be paired up with."
Right, and it's so funny because the thing, I mean, one of the main things I think of when I think of Finn is he could have been shipped with 3 other characters without Jaina coming along. You first had him with Rey. There was definitely some chemistry with him and Poe, and I will forever die on that hill. We'll get to that when I'm sure we'll get to The Force Awakens. And then him and Rose. There was absolutely no reason other than representation to bring in Jaina. Or Jana, whatever her name is. I can't even remember her name.
Jaina.
Yeah. So, like, what? Just pick one. You've got 3 excellent options right there, especially when you didn't give Rose anything to do. Just like pick one. Damn it.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, it's a really weird. It's a really weird choice to make. And also, like, at this point, I'd like to also mention that the erasure of Rose Tico in this film is criminal.
Tragic.
The lines that I felt like, even if she didn't go with them, the lines that I felt she should have had were given to fucking Mary Doc Brandy Buck.
Oh my God, they didn't give him anything to do either.
But they gave him
2 lines.
But he had he had some decently sized like chunks of dialogue. There were only 2 of them, but like both of those lines of dialogue should have gone to her. He literally had no reason to be in this movie.
No,
why did we introduce this character? Like, there's no reason for him to be there except that he is friends with J.J. Abrams from because he was on Lost.
Lost, yeah. Right.
But that dialogue was stuff that Rose should have been saying. That should have been more stuff for Rose to do.
Right. So when this movie came out and I was so bothered by how awful it was, one of my favorite things to do was go on YouTube and watch all these like systematic story beat by story beat, several hours long, like takedowns of this film. And so a lot of my thoughts about this film are not original, except for the ones that I wrote down like immediately after I saw it. But one suggestion that somebody had about what Rose could have done to bind this story together is that there could have been a sequence of Rose going out to the various star systems to try and drum up the support they needed from people with ships in order to make that reveal at the end with Poe and Lando and all these ships coming out to help them out, in order to make that a little bit more realistic. I'm not saying that it would ruin the reveal of all these ships coming. Maybe she's going to these star systems and she has to really try to convince them. Maybe she's not really getting anywhere, and it's like, oh, will they or won't they kind of deal. It would have given her some sort of aim here, some sort of impact she could have had on the story, because that really is something that could have made it a little bit more interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the one other, there's Charlie from Lost. I don't even think of him as Mary in this. I think of him as Charlie because it's a J.J. Abrams film.
Okay.
Peter Jackson. But so Charlie from Lost, he also says at one point when they're trying to figure out what to do, like, and this is like very targeted, let's just like kick The Last Jedi some more.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, let's do some hold-on maneuvers. And he's like, no. That move was one.
It's a million to one shot.
Yeah, it's like why? Like, you didn't need to put that in there.
So funny. I know, it was so funny.
You didn't need to put it. Like, the only reason that was in there was because J.J. Abrams didn't like it, or someone didn't like it, or like fans complained or something, and so like, oh, we have to address hold-on maneuvers. And it's just like, yeah, obviously it was like a suicide, like one, we know that, like, people don't just blow their ships up because then like, they're killing themselves. So yeah, obviously it's like a last ditch maneuver. There's no reason to put that line in there except that you're angry about The Last Jedi.
And what's really funny is that his only other line that I can remember is when they're talking about how Palpatine came back and he's like, yeah, cloning, secrets only the Sith knew. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Did you not know of the Clone Wars? Like, clearly cloning is a thing in this universe. What do you mean secrets only the Sith knew? Are you out of your mind? Like, oh my God, it's laughable. It really, truly is. How little this film cares about the previous 6 films. It's absolutely mind-boggling. It's basic stuff. We're not even like grasping at straws here. This is basic stuff that they just did not care to honor from the past almost 50 years of filmmaking.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Um.
Can I also, if we're going back to Finn real quick, can I also point out that approximately 50% of Finn's lines in this movie are just him shouting Ray?
It's either that or like his best lines are just like him and Poe having just delightful back and forth. They have such an effortless chemistry,
They
and
do, which
I
is why
love
they
it.
should have been a couple.
I'd be fine with that.
God
I'd be
damn
totally
it.
fine with that.
They clearly only put that one chick's character in there. So it's like, hey, by the way, Poe's not gay. Just so
Yeah,
you know. And I'm
yeah.
like, that's really offensive,
Right, and
actually.
like,
I really don't
and
like
once
that.
again, like, there's no need for it.
There's no
There's just
need
no
for
need.
it.
We don't need to shoehorn in any sort of like connection with another person. Like, we already have our team. Let them be a
Right.
team, and if people want to ship them, that's fine. You don't need to like deny them that by giving the character someone else to latch on to.
Right. And they did it for both him and for Finn.
Yeah.
They did it
Yeah.
twice.
And at least Jaina does stuff in this. Like
Right.
Carrie Russell's character,
Right.
don't remember her name.
Me neither. Completely inconsequential.
Um, yeah, don't I just don't like that character. It's just like you are completely pointless. You're just here for Poe to like flirt with, and it's so stupid.
And at the end of her scene or her portion of the story, she's like, "Oh yeah, I've been saving up my whole life to get this token. It's my way out. Here you go."
Here,
Like,
you can have it. It's more important.
yeah,
Like
you
her,
can just
she
have it. Like,
turned
go.
quick. She went from like, oh, I'm going to like kill you, or oh, you have a Jedi, you have the person that's wanted. I'm going to turn them in for bounty. To like immediately, like, I have to help you. Let me take you to see Babu Frick.
In like 10 minutes of screen time.
No. And like from like when she says like I'm going to turn you in for the bounty,
Right.
to when she says come on, I have to help you, is like 10 seconds.
It's so,
Because she says it, then all of a sudden people start shooting, and she's like, come on, come with me. And it's like, but you literally just wanted to turn them in.
right.
So why wouldn't you just be like, hey, we're over here, I'm turning them in?
Right.
Like,
And this
like it
and
doesn't
this
make
is
any
this
sense.
is this is a very clear instance where, with a lot of script doctoring, because there are some pretty fundamental issues with this script, but with a lot of script doctoring, this film should probably have been 2 films. And you maybe could have made that character work if you gave her an actual story arc and a reason to, switch her position on whether or not she's going to turn these people in or not, because she has been trying to get off this planet for her entire life.
You know why it feels like it should be 2 films? It's because they're actively trying to erase The Last Jedi with it. No, I'm serious. Like, they're
I believe. No, you're right.
Spending all of this real estate of story time, of runtime, right, to invalidating the previous film, to undercutting the stuff that Rian Johnson was trying to do in that film. And if you like it or you don't like it, it doesn't matter. It exists, so you have to run with it from where it left off.
Right.
And it's so insulting to spend half your runtime invalidating the work of the artist that came before you.
Right. And you know me, I am not the biggest fan of Last Jedi. I don't hate it, but I'm not the biggest fan. But I would have at least respected this film more if they had just gone with those choices and been like, okay, that's the story that Rian Johnson wanted to make, and we signed off on it, and that's on us. But you know what? That's what the story is now, and we have to go along with it. Like, I at least would have understood.
It seems to me like they had cold feet, and if you read Colin Trevorrow's script, it doesn't invalidate what happened in The Last Jedi. It builds off of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Duel of the Fates, like what it was originally going to be, is leaps and bounds better because it actually gels with what came before it.
Right. If you're listening to this and you haven't, I'm looking directly at my webcam. If you're listening to this or watching this and you haven't read that script, go find it. Thank you. Yes. If you're watching, I have homework for you. Go find the Duel of the Fate script, the original script for episode 9. Read it, but give yourself some time to recover, because it's so much better than what we ended up with. And it'll make you mad for what could have been. I know it's homework, but do it anyway.
Yes. So we got about a few minutes left here. Luke and Lando. Want to close on them real quick?
Yeah, and also maybe 3PO for a hot second.
Sure. So my Luke thoughts are he was there, whatever. My Lando thoughts are I don't know if Billy D. Williams knew what was going on, but he was having
So
a really
true.
fun time. And he was just really happy to be playing in the sandbox with everybody.
Right.
And it was really cute to see his enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And he still has just the most charisma. And I loved that.
Yeah.
And then 3PO, why do the sacrifice once again? Like, why do the fake out sacrifice thing if you can just restore the person?
Right.
You know.
My 3 quick thoughts on those 3 characters are, if Luke can still use the Force while he's dead, then what's the point of being alive in this universe? Like, if you can still raise the X-Wing, then like, what's the point of any of this at all?
Well, that's if you become one with the Force. Like, that's like a reward for very specific people that they seem to now give out like candy.
Sure. Yeah, I get. Yeah.
Like, it was a big deal. Like, Qui-Gon figured it out, I think, first.
Yep. Mm-hmm. He did.
Yoda.
Then he taught it to Yoda, who taught it to Obi-Wan.
But fucking Kylo did it.
Right.
And I'm like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's one of those things where, using the Force from beyond the grave is, again, one of those many things that could have been useful in other iterations of the story. So we don't know why we weren't able to use it, except for that, it's just a thing that they threw in so we could have the X-Wing rising from the swamp moment as a callback to The Empire Strikes Back. And it's dumb and I don't like it. Lando, are we really supposed to believe that Lando's been hiding out on that planet, that desert-ish planet, for decades, just kind of like waiting? I don't know why he was there, and it was weird, and I don't like it. And then 3PO. Okay, oh my God, they did 3PO so dirty. Besides the fake out that you already touched on, you mean to tell me that a protocol droid who was built by a child, a very smart and Force-sensitive child, but a child nonetheless, this child was like, I'm going to give him the power to read forbidden languages, but like it's going to be like deep in his memory and you have to like, kill him in order to do it. Like, what? Where did this come from?
Is that just like a standard thing in like the memory chips? Like, that, like, you can't get memory chips that don't have this protocol in them because it's forbidden stuff that you shouldn't be trying to decode.
Right.
I don't know, but like within the text, like, it makes no freaking sense.
Right. And I would have been able to swallow it maybe if they had if this was their way to like, we're going to like kill 3PO out to have an emotional beat in the story. I would have been like, okay, this is dumb, but like fine. But then they didn't even do that. They set up this thing for like 3PO to die as much as a droid can die, and then they didn't stick with it. It's like, then what was the point of doing that in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
But it gave us Babu Frick, so like maybe it was worth it.
So favorite moment, because like it felt like Babu Frick died halfway through the movie, like when they escaped, like it felt like Babu Frick was dead. Right. And so I was like sad about that kind of, and then when everyone showed up, first of all, I don't know how Lando was able to get like the entire galaxy to just turn up like
in 16 hours, I might add.
In 16 hours.
They were given weird. Like a time limit somehow.
So I didn't understand that, but it gave me the scene where Babu Frick just pops up and goes, "Hey!"
That was pretty
and
great.
that is a peak moment for me in this film.
I think my peak moment, and not in like a good way, is when Finn and Jenna and all the other folks are riding those like sheep, goat-like things on like the surface of the Star Destroyer. It's to me, I think I started laughing because to me they were trying so hard to have their like Braveheart or Riders of Rohan, a Return of the King moment, and it just did not work. There was just no payoff there whatsoever, and I'm like, it's so transparent.
They're not on a planet, so how do they have air?
Yeah.
They're floating in space.
Or gravity.
Like, how is this happening? Are they still in orbit? because it doesn't look like they are.
Right.
There are thousands of ships in the sky. Like, it doesn't seem like they're in any sort of orbit, or is this entire like nebula that they're in oxygenized? I have no idea. Like, it makes no sense.
Yeah, and and not only is it no payoff, it just looks silly. It's just silly. It's just so dumb.
It felt like prequel graphics at that point. Like, that was a weird moment where I'm like, this feels like the prequels all of a sudden, like in terms of like the graphics, which is a shame because I think a lot of the sequel trilogy did feel very like realistic, or like within like the structure of the world. It felt very lived in. Like,
it's very pretty.
It felt like a return to that, slightly elevated because we're have better cameras and everything, but it very much felt like that return to like practical things that you could tangibly touch, as opposed to everything being CG in the prequel era. But like, that scene throws all that out the window, and I don't.
Oh God, it's so funny. It's actively hilarious.
Yeah. So what's the next movie on our list? I think that's our deep dive into Rise of Skywalker. There's really not a lot redeemable for us on that. No. So sorry if that was so negative. If you enjoy Rise of Skywalker, I think like from here on out, it'll probably get better in terms of like that. So
it'll be more positive because our next one is the Clone Wars movie.
I like the Clone Wars movie.
Yeah.
I like pretty much every other movie from this point. Like,
there's a lot to like. There's a lot to like. Now, I'm curious as to, because we have a number of ties. If we're going by our tier rank, our definitive tier ranking, we have a number of ties, including one 3-way tie, if I recall correctly. So maybe we'll take those ties and we'll go like in chronological story order. Like if one's a prequel, one's an original trilogy, one's a sequel, we'll like go in that order. Yeah. Maybe. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Groovy.
So our next one is the Clone Wars, the animated film. Mm-hmm. And yeah, awesome. This was fun.
We probably won't have as many hot takes about this one.
No, like this one is such an egregious like slap in the face to the movies that came before it. I think there is just a lot to be like, why? Because I don't understand the characters' motivations. I think for the next one, I'll have a lot more positive things to say, or like storylines that I'm invested in that I actually want to talk about. This, like, I literally just want to bitch. I just rewatched it, and this is what I did the entire time I'm watching it. Like, and my partner was watching it with me. It was her first time seeing it, and
oh no,
it probably was not the best way to watch it, but yeah.
Yeah, because now every subsequent time she sees it, if she ever sees it again, she'll like have your voice like playing in her head as like a commentary.
Yeah. Pretty much. Oh, one last thing. Yes. The way that you fixed the Lando thing with him getting everybody is like that should have been an ongoing thread from the previous film. When you see Broom Boy being inspired, a running thing through the film for me that I would have loved to see are people activating throughout the film, the resistance. Like, there's resistance popping up all over the galaxy because like the spark that ignites the flame that like that happened in the previous film. So you should be hearing rumblings of this all over, and then it makes sense that Lando's like, well, let me go get all these people that are activating all over the galaxy. Just put out a signal, galaxy wide, and give everyone the coordinates, and everybody is turning up, and like and you pray that they're gonna make it in time, and then you see everybody just kind of at the end for the big reveal, and then I'm here for it, because now you've also just given the entire galaxy agency and saying, no, we're sick of this, Palpatine. Stop playing with our lives.
Yeah, and what's really frustrating, part of the reason why this movie is so frustrating is that there's a skeleton of a good story here, I think. Mm-hmm. It's just so badly mismanaged that it completely collapses on itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
well,
verdict.
It was fun talking in the cantina with you, man.
Yeah, you too. I'll see you next time.
Yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Thank you guys for watching.
Bye.